In previous videos in this class, we've talked about integrating your Joomla site with third-party services such as Google Analytics and Clicky in order to get more accurate and useful information about people visiting your site. In this video, we're going to get your Joomla site integrated with another equally important third-party service. This one is Google Webmaster Tools. Now, if you've dabbled in SEO in any way, you've probably heard of Webmaster Tools. This is where Google sends you any message that it thinks is important about your site. So if your site is having indexing problems with Google's little robots, or touch wood at this point, or if your site has any penalties or problems in Google's eyes, you'll see those messages in Google Webmaster Tools. So it's vitally important that your site is registered here so you can see these messages. Go to google.com/webmasters, click Sign in to Webmaster Tools, and on the right-hand side you're going to see an Add a Site button. Go ahead and click that and enter the URL of the site that you'd like to add to Google Webmaster Tools. Click Continue, and Google will offer a range of verification options. One of these is going to be easier than all the others if you added Google Analytics, as we showed you how to do earlier in the class. Click on Alternate Methods, and you can choose the option which says use your Google Analytics account. Check that box, use your Google Analytics account, and if you are using the same Google account as you did to set up your Google Analytics integration with your site in the earlier video, you should be able to click Verify, and Google will automatically link the two accounts for you. In this case, if I click on Verify, I will hopefully get a success message that I've verified my ownership of this particular site. If I click Continue, I'll now get taken to the main Webmaster Tools screen. At the moment, I'm not going to see any errors. To be honest, this tends to get fairly busy because Google does often show some false errors, but there is some particularly useful information here. On the left-hand side, there's a Search Appearance tab. That shows you information about how your site appears in Google search results. It will take some time to actually become visible, but you can see with our live site, OS Training, that there's quite a lot of information in. So now that we've seen how to add a site to Google Webmaster Tools, let's take a look at some of the information that Webmaster Tools tells us about our site. This is a site dashboard for a site that's been registered with Google Webmaster Tools for several years now. The top link on the left-hand side is called Site Messages, and that's where Google will send you all of those really important messages about your site. For example, on at least one occasion, Googlebot has not been able to access our site. This was early in 2014, and we had some server problems on that day, and the site wasn't loading, and Google gave us some warnings about it. If I was engaged in some spammy tactics, for example posting links on websites that I shouldn't, then this is where Google will give me warnings about a possible penalty, and so it's really important to pay attention to the messages that Google is sending you here. It also gives you some information that you can really practically use about your site. Under search traffic, you're going to see information about, on the blue line, how many times your site actually appears in Google search results. The red line underneath it, which is far smaller, is actually telling you how many times people have clicked through from those search results. You can see that the number of clicks on each result is actually a tiny fraction of the number of impressions. Further down the page, you can see what people are searching for, the keywords that they're using to find your site. And we have impressions on the left-hand side. There are nearly 20,000 people searching for this keyword and looking at our site, and just under 1,000 are clicking through, so that gives a click-through rate of about 5%. You can also see the average position it appears on the page. So my site being down in about the 7th position gets a 5% click-through rate, but if it's closer to the 2nd position, the click-through rate jumps to nearly 25%. And you can see some equally big figures further down the page. If my site is around the 2nd or 3rd position for this particular key phrase, I'm getting a click-through rate of well over 1/3. So the search queries is really useful. Under links to your site, you can see which sites are linking the most to your site, and you can see which of your content is linked to most frequently. Further down the page, under Google's index, you can see how many URLs you have. If you're adding content, this should be slowly climbing over time. And under crawl, you can see useful information such as any errors which are being shown. Fortunately, we don't have any on this site at the moment. You can actually look at your site exactly how Google will see it. There are other useful tools under the crawl tab. For example, fetches Google. One of the useful things that this can do is actually show you what Google will see for your site. So in this case, I entered the URL. In this case, I just left it as my home page, and I clicked fetch and render. And if I click on this link here, you're going to actually see what Google has been able to bring back about this particular site. So if this happened to be a Flash website, you wouldn't be able to see anything. This page would be empty. This is how the Googlebot actually sees your website. And so if you happen to have any flashy slideshows or any things that are flying in or out or maybe hidden in Flash, then this is well worth checking out. You can see directly here whether Google is actually able to read what you have on your page. And then underneath these crawl settings, we also have sitemaps. This is where you can create a list of all the different pages on your site and submit it to Google Webmaster Tools for indexing. That's going to be the topic of our next video. We're going to show you how to create a sitemap for your Joomla site.